our Meet Up Poet Monday virtual series. This episode is being recorded. Please remember to keep your microphone muted. We hope that this Zoom meeting serves as a way for you to connect with a current student and hear about their poet experience live. Please ask our student questions throughout the session by unmuting your microphone or by using the chat box feature to write your questions, and I will read them out loud. So to start, my name is Ashley Maui Lopez, and I'm a member of the advancement team at Whittier College. I've been hosting this series, and I've been at the college for 4 years. I have Alex Popescu, the Director of Development here, assisting me with all the behind-the-scenes work. Thank you, Alex, for that. I appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for your time and for working this into your Monday virtual routine. Now, let me introduce to you our first-year student who is on track to graduate in 3 years, Lauren Ross, class of 2022. Hi, Lauren. How are you doing today?
Hi, everybody. I'm doing pretty good.
Great. Thank you for your presence today and for making this call fit into your schedule. We really appreciate it. Can you please tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so to start, obviously my name is Lauren. I'm from Edmond, Oklahoma, which is pretty unusual for a Whittier student. I'm actually in Oklahoma right now at home, social distancing. And so the first thing you need to know about me is that I love the arts. I grew up doing dance for most of my life, ballet, jazz, ballet, jazz, contemporary hip hop for a better part of 15 years. And then beyond just my time doing dance, I have been doing photography for most of my life as well, film and digital. I've done everything from corporate photography to weddings, so I pretty much always have a camera in my hand. And then anything else is that I have been playing violin for 8 years, and it is probably one of the most profound experiences to be able to play music with and make music with a large group of people. While I won't be playing anything for you today, I can tell you 2 of my favorite pieces I've had the opportunity to play if you want to go hear what I have played. The first one is Mozart 40, which once you hear it, you can understand how you get the melody stuck in your head. And then the other one, which is probably a little bit more well-known, would be Dvorak's New World Symphony, particularly the 4th movement. I spent many morning practices in the orchestra room working with the full orchestra to get that one right. So I love the arts, and I love going to, philharmonic concerts or art museums, theater and plays, ballets. Anything and everything that has to do with the arts is something that I'm ready to be a part of. But beyond, those hobbies, I also love going on walks. And that probably sounds a little silly, but I absolutely love taking walks. One of my favorite parts of Whittier's location in Uptown Whittier was that I could take walks into Uptown and the surrounding neighborhoods all the time. I'd often take walks in the afternoon between my afternoon classes and evening meetings, and I'd usually take a friend with me, and we'd go on a walk and we'd talk, and we wouldn't, we just kind of appreciate and enjoy life. And my friends refer to my Fitbit that I wear every time I go on a walk or I exercise, like as my child. I'm wearing it right now. It does everything from track my sleep and my heart rate to my steps. So it's helped me through a lot of different health issues and just making sure that I am being healthy as a college student that's kind of pulled in every which direction all the time. But beyond that, anytime I want to learn something new or experience a new topic, one of my other favorite things to do is watch TED Talks. Now, if you don't know what TED Talks are, TED is it's an organization that's technology, education, and design. And basically they want to spread, knowledge and experiences all over the world. And they will host conferences where experts in their field will give talks on whatever it is they want to. And they're called TED Talks. And they'll be anywhere from like 14 to 18 minutes long. And I love them. And I watch them all the time. And I have 3 favorites that Ashley said I could share today. So I'll be telling you the title and she'll be sharing the links. These ones are my favorite of all time. And sometimes I'll have one or two that change in, but right now these are my favorites. So the first is Roman Mars, Why City Flags May Be the Worst Thing You've Never Noticed. And the reason why this is one of my favorites is because this guy, Roman Mars, he hosts a radio talk show where he talks about flags and philologists, which are people who study flags. And I didn't even know that was a thing, let alone something you could have a career or profession in. And it also goes to show that a lot of the times the things in our day-to-day life that we don't realize have a greater impact than we think. So that's that talk. Then the second one is David Epstein's How Falling Behind Can Get You Ahead. And the reason why I love this talk so much is because as a college student who, just graduated high school and has just finally finished their first year, more often than not, we're told to specialize and decide what we want to do for the rest of our lives pretty much right now. And that's a pretty terrifying thing to ask of someone who's only 18 or 19 years old. And what David Epstein talks about is how a lot of the times people want to be like Tiger Woods, where they get handed a putter at 2 years old and the rest of their life is spent just doing one thing. They're experts at it. It's the only thing they know. But what he talks about is more often than not, by exploring other topics and ideas and expanding your knowledge into other areas before you decide to specialize, you're actually able to apply that knowledge and experiences to wherever you decide to go, and it better helps inform your decisions, which was really nice to hear as someone who isn't ready to completely specialize into one thing yet. And then finally would be Stephen Denier's How to Achieve Your Most Ambitious Goals. He is a basically Wall Street investor who is incredibly good at what he does. But beyond just his Wall Street investing, he also is a large-scale art installation artist. He holds the world record for the world's largest granny square, which is not something you think would be related to somebody who does Wall Street and finance. He also is an avid mountain biker. He is a New York Times bestselling author and has a whole slew of different things that he's done with his life. And he talks about how by breaking all of your goals down into manageable steps, you're able to accomplish anything. But more important to me was seeing somebody who was incredibly successful in their career, also able to explore various other topics, various other ideas or avenues, and still have a successful career on top of that. And so these TED Talks are some of my favorites. I've watched them multiple times, and anytime someone asks for a recommendation, I reach to say one of those. And then finally, I think sharing a little bit about Oklahoma and like what it's like right now, because I don't think a lot of people necessarily know, or if you're not from Oklahoma, you don't necessarily know where different things are in different places. Oklahoma has officially entered phase 3, or in most places is about to enter phase 3. So we are pretty much open for business. We have been under lockdown for the past few months, but because Oklahoma is pretty spread out as a state, even in its urban areas, we're able to socially distance easier than some other places, and where you may or may not find requirements to wear your masks or social distance in different places, we are pretty much at the point where almost all locations and businesses are open. People are going back to their day-to-day lives and starting to reintegrate themselves into whatever normal is going to look like now.
Great. For everyone that's just tuning in now, Lauren just shared with us some of her favorite TED Talks, as well as 2 orchestra performances that she was in high school. So I have the links. I copy and pasted into the chat box feature, so everyone can feel free to, look at it at their own convenience. Let's see. Are there any questions? Oh, Eva says Symphony No. 9 is her favorite piece too. Okay, so great. So hey, Lauren, why did you choose Whittier College?
Yes, so I was really picky whenever it came to deciding college. I knew I wanted to be a business major, and I knew I wanted to have small class sizes, which pretty much already narrows down your choices, because at most larger institutions, especially state schools, you're going to have business classes in lecture halls of 400, 300, 500 students. Because of this, it meant I was kind of narrowed down to a small liberal arts college. Not only that, but I really wanted opportunities to study abroad and have really personal relationships with my professors, because I think when you're able to have personal relationships with the people who have experience, you're able to grow in your own understanding even more. I also wanted to be closer to a larger city. As I mentioned earlier, I love the arts, and so major cities usually have really phenomenal programs that allow students to participate in the arts for very cheap. LA's own Los Angeles Symphony Orchestra allows student rush tickets for only $10. So I can see Gustav Dudamel for $10. That's pretty phenomenal. But beyond all of those reasons, my stepdad went to Whittier. He graduated the class of '91. He was a history and political science double major. He played on the baseball team. He was president of the Lancers at his time and was heavily involved. So growing up, I'd always hear about his experiences at Whittier and how he wanted me to be a poet. And, you know, I guess he kind of wore me down a little bit because that's where I'm going. And I think too, something that has been one of the coolest experiences is Doc McBride was his advisor for pretty much everything he was involved in. He was his advisor for classes. He was his advisor on the baseball team. He was his advisor for the Lancers. And so he'd always talk about McBride in his classes when I was growing up. And now, having been on Whittier's campus for a year, I've actually had an opportunity to take classes from McBride. So that kind of full circle moment was pretty cool and was definitely one of the reasons that I was pushed towards Whittier College.
Great. I'm happy to hear your stepdad spoke so highly of Whittier and encouraged you to attend his alma mater. We have so many legacy families here at Whittier, and I think that experience makes it even more special. It's great. What are you currently studying and some of your aspirations?
So I am currently a business major with an international business concentration and a minor in Chinese. The minor wasn't exactly a plan at the beginning. It was almost on accident. I decided I wanted to challenge myself and take a language that I knew pretty much nothing about. And through classes and the professors, I am going to end up minoring in it. But in the terms of business, my first goal after I graduate is to start in reinsurance. And many people will probably be scratching their heads at that. What is reinsurance? Why do you want to go into reinsurance? So basically, every insurance policy that exists has to be insured by a reinsurance agency, because most companies cannot afford the liability that exists on the insurance policy that they're selling or creating. And because of this, there are reinsurers that will take on some of the liability and will then, you know, receive some of the money that comes from the policies and the premiums that people pay each month. But why I like reinsurance is not many people know about it. It's a really involved industry, and my favorite part is that you will get to learn about every other industry on the planet, because all industries need insurance and all industries need reinsurance. So you never know what kind of policy is going to walk through the door. You never know what you're going to get to learn about next. Whether it be the 18-wheeler trucks and, you know, their axles and the liability of them traveling across the country, or window washing unions in New York City, both of which are actual deals that I have seen. You never know what's going to come of it, and because of that, I find it really interesting and also a great place to start in international business, because the majority of the reinsurance companies that exist are based internationally. After I start in reinsurance, one of my first goals is to go get my MBA. There's a few particular programs I'm looking at the moment, and they would be Stanford's MBA program. It's phenomenal. It's top ranked in the world for a number of years. They have a great entrepreneurship program and international business program. They have a lot of connections to female leaders around the world. Beyond Stanford, of course, as like a dream school, there is the University of Washington, Seattle, which is actually one of my mom's alma maters, and they just have a great MBA program. And outside of the United States, there's a number of international MBAs that are also highly ranking and offer really great opportunities, particularly LSB, or the London School of Business, if I want to go into more like finance and international business. IE, which is a school in Barcelona that has like the highest number of female CEOs in the world that have come from their program. So they have great, networking and connections. Also NCED, which is in Singapore, and HEC Paris, which is an international MBA. Basically, all of those are just really great international programs that allow for a lot of communication with different entities, which could help inform, my kind of experiences going forward after my MBA. But I think regardless of what I end up doing, getting to my MBA or after it, I think I have an ultimate goal, and it would be to be a TED Fellow. And obviously, like with my TED Talks, the people have to give them. So TED Fellows, each year, TED as an organization chooses 200 individuals who are exemplary in whatever they do, whether it be, the finance brokers on Wall Street, or it be artists, change makers, basically people who are changing the world in whatever it is they do. And I think an ultimate goal would be to make enough change in whatever industry I work in that I'm looked to as someone who is a leader or a visionary in that industry. So that's kind of where my end goal is to be at the level of what a TED Fellow expects, even if, that's not exactly one direction or another. It's kind of an ultimate goal to be at the level of what TED Fellows are looked to as.
Great. Your ambition to continue your education and enter a global career path sounds exciting. I'm sure you'll accomplish all your goals. What was your favorite or most challenging class that you have taken so far at Whittier?
So my favorite by far has been a class I took last semester, and it was music business with Danny Lozano. And if you don't know Danny, he is a Grammy Award-winning flautist and a phenomenal music professor. He teaches, this is the first time he taught music business in a number of years, and it was a connected course with marketing. And there were so many different reasons why music business was one of my favorite courses. At first, the textbook itself was actually a novel written by Donald Passman, which is basically the best music business lawyer in the business. I actually have the textbook here. It's just a ginormous everything you need to know about music business. And then Danny himself, as a professor, he has this way of animating the class. He is very personable, and as he says it, you can't call me Professor Lozano because I know you're not one of my students, and we all have to call him Danny. And he was able to make a topic that is not only incredibly confusing, but very difficult to understand, very approachable. Not only that, but one of the best experiences I had in his class was that he'd bring in guests. He'd bring in Whittier graduates to class that had graduated with majors in music or music business through the Whittier Scholars Program, who were successful at what they did, and they'd be guest speakers for a day. He brought in graduates. He brought in 4 guests over the course of our semester. Only one of them wasn't a Whittier graduate. They were people who were very good at what they did and incredibly successful in the music business and well connected to big names, and they came from Whittier. And that was a pretty great experience because it really showcased that, this was a great institution that allowed for a lot of success, and there was a lot of networking opportunities for kids who did want to pursue music business. The class was so popular, he ended up having to sign in 25 extra kids on the first day, and we had to move from the music building, where there were kids literally like bringing in chairs from the other rooms, to one of the only lecture halls on campus. So it shows you how popular that class was. It's going to continue to be offered. And then one of my hardest classes, like also most interesting, would be a class I'm currently in with Professor Fatos Radaniki, my Finance in the Brain class, which basically breaks down all of the like internal and inherent biases that we have in regards to finance and why we make such terrible financial decisions. It goes into, you know, different kinds of research, both in like the neuroscience part of the brain to the more like behavioral economics side, and it's been incredibly interesting so far.
Very cool. At Whittier, we love when our alumni come back and share their career experience with students. One day that'll be you sharing your finance tips with everyone. What has been the most challenging class that you have taken outside of your major, Lauren?
Chinese, 1000%. So I decided kind of on a whim that I wanted to take Chinese. Two of my best friends spoke Chinese and Mandarin, and they were always talking about Chinese class. They'd end up going to Chinese club events, and they would talk in Chinese while I was sitting there. I felt like I was kind of missing out. I also really appreciated the character portion of the language and how beautiful it was. And so I decided, might as well try this. And it's always fun to learn for the sake of learning. So I signed up, and I was amazed. It is definitely the most difficult class I have ever taken and will continue to take, but I think it's incredibly rewarding. In those first few weeks, I would go from being entirely lost on what was happening to slowly starting to understand words or characters or match up phrases. And it made me feel like I was in kindergarten again, because, you know, in most of the other classes that we'll take on campus or our majors, we have an interest in them already, or some part of that subject we already know a little bit about. But to go into a class where I know legitimately nothing, maybe hello, maybe, legitimately nothing, and learn from like step zero was pretty great. It kind of reminded me how amazing it is to learn something new again, and it's definitely been both the most challenging and rewarding class I've taken.
Nice. Sounds like you're definitely challenging yourself, and I commend you for wanting to learn a very difficult language. What types of clubs and organizations have you been part of at Whittier?
So it's probably no surprise, but I'm incredibly involved on campus. First and foremost, I am one of the founding members and president of our Rotary organization, which is considered Rotaract for college kids. This started actually because I was heavily involved in Key Club in high school. And Key Club is a subgroup of Kiwanis, and it's a volunteer organization, and it's on the international level. It has like over 200,000 people that are involved in it. And I was involved to the point where I was at like a district level leadership position. I was going to international conventions. I was like pretty continuously hosting volunteer events in my city. And because of this, I wanted to get involved in the college level. And I actually reached out to the CKI, which is like the college level of Key Club. I reached out to the org on Whittier's campus, and in January, when I came to do a tour and visit for a scholarship weekend, I actually met with members of the current club, and I was added to their group chat, and I accidentally ended up getting voted as president as an incoming freshman for the club. So I went from like not like being involved in high school, but having to like work my way up over the years to being like, here, you know, start with this organization as a freshman. And so we're working on this next year, expanding into kind of all of the different areas of campus and making sure that when clubs want to volunteer, they have an avenue that they can do that in. I think one of the most impactful things you can do with your time is give it to others, because you're able to see how valuable it is to other people. And maybe an hour doesn't mean that much to you, but whenever you see how much it can mean to other people, it really increases the impact that you have. And so that's what I'm kind of doing with Rotary right now as president. And then I'm also the secretary on the executive board of the ASWC Senate of our student body government for the college. This past year, I was the residential hall representative, so I represented all of the problems that had to do with housing on campus, and I ran for secretary. So I'm in charge of all of the minutes and communication from Senate and the student body up through admin, and then I'm also in charge of all of the elections and our Whittier We Vote initiative, which is pretty important this upcoming year considering it's a presidential election year. So I'm really excited to try and create more voter engagement on campus and hopefully have great avenues of communication between Senate, the student body, and admin. Beyond those two roles in leadership, I am a social media coordinator for WC The Rock. So I get to take my camera all over campus and I take photos for our social media channels, and I'm also in charge of the hashtag Humans of WC, which is kind of like Humans of New York, if you know what that is. We go around, we take pictures of students on campus, and we share their stories and experiences, similarly to what I'm doing right now with you guys. It's a way to better connect students to one another and kind of introduce students from all different backgrounds. And then I'm also a member of Model United Nations, and sadly, we didn't get to go to conference, but next year I will be representing Canada in the United Nations Environmental Assembly, and I'm really excited about that. That was the class I got to have with McBride this year. And then finally, one of my friends is starting an ASL club on campus, and I'm pretty excited to be a part of that because ASL is of the language of the unheard, and it allows, more communication. And I know the alphabet, but I don't know very much else, and the girl who's starting it has a mom who's deaf, and she wants to kind of spread the knowledge around, and I think that'd be super impactful, and I'm really looking forward to joining that as well.
That's great. Sounds like you're having a blast being so involved on campus. Lauren, is there anything you'd like to say to donors who support you and other Whittier students?
Absolutely. So one of the reasons why I'm even able to come to Whittier College is because I am a recipient of the John Greenleaf Whittier Scholarship. One of my goals that my parents gave me when I was looking at applying out of state was getting my tuition amount down to what it would be to go to college in-state. If you don't know, that's a pretty hefty task to be able to do. And because of the scholarship I received at Whittier, that's why I'm able to be here right now. And it's not just me. Pretty much every single person I know, this is actually a fact, every single student at Whittier is on some kind of scholarship or financial aid. This was something that was presented to us by the admin this past year whenever we were receiving a budget breakdown in Senate. But every single student at Whittier receives a scholarship of some kind. So anytime you donate, anytime you're able to give back to the campus, you're directly impacting students who may or may not be able to have this experience otherwise. If I didn't have this scholarship, I'd be at the University of Oklahoma right now taking online classes next year in lecture halls with over 400 students. Instead, I'm at a campus that is working diligently to make sure that I still have an in-person experience, even with everything that's going on this year. So I just want to say thank you, and that what you do really matters, especially to, current kids on campus, because without you guys, we wouldn't even be able to be on campus.
I couldn't agree with you more, Lauren. We are very lucky to have generous donors. Big thank you to them all. Where is your favorite place to hang out at the college?
Okay, my favorite place to hang out is the first floor communal tables at the library. I'm always at the library. I was always at the library in high school, and so a campus that had a good library was really important to me because that's where I study. It's where I get most things done. But at Whittier, the library works on like a tiered system. So the first floor is kind of like the group floor. Everyone can talk. It's kind of like calm, quiet speaking, but you're still allowed to talk. The second floor is whispers. Third floor is no talking whatsoever. But on the group floor, all of the tables are organized in like 10 to 15 person tables, and then there's like maybe 10 or 15 of them. And so you're going to be stuck sitting there studying with people you don't know or groups that you may or may not have met. And as a freshman who legitimately knew nobody coming onto campus, it was actually a great way to make friends, and I didn't think that would be where I met people. But every once in a while, people would have something at the whiteboard and they'd be speaking on a topic, and you'd interject and say, hey, I know what's going on, and you'd end up meeting new people. It's how I was introduced to a number of my closest friends. It's how I was able to meet a lot of different people and organizations, because people will have their meetings right there. And it also was a great kind of form of community bonding, because anytime, it would be getting later, the, number of people in there would start to dwindle down, and people would like come over and sit at one table, introduce themselves. And so, it's my favorite place because it's kind of where the community of Whittier is at.
Great answer. How have things changed for you recently with this new way of living and learning?
So obviously I don't live in California, and I'm home in Oklahoma right now. One of the changes that I wasn't honestly expecting that's actually been really difficult is the time zone changes. So it's a 2-hour time zone difference. So while it should be 2:35, it would be 2:35, 2:36 there. It's 4:35, 4:36 here. And I will like wake up in the middle of the night thinking it's the wrong time in California or Oklahoma. I have gotten early to class sometimes or come late to meetings. It's been something I didn't expect to be such a difficult, I guess, idea to grasp, but that's definitely been something that's kind of thrown me for a loop. Beyond just the time zone differences, being online for school has been pretty hard, because that's not an environment that I thrive in necessarily. And so kind of working with professors and the campus to, make sure that I'm still staying engaged has been pretty hard. I also think being in 2 different places that have completely different views on what's going on in the world also means that you're kind of stuck between 2 different places. For instance, Oklahoma is basically open. It was never as locked down as other locations, and LA was one of the major hotspots in the United States. So trying to keep up with the different legislation and bills and rules that were passed in different places and figure out, what was or wasn't right or correct also was pretty interesting to try and navigate, because I was living in a location that was much more open, but I was kind of telecommuting to a location that was much more closed. So trying to work between those 2 has also been a learning experience as well.
I agree. Things have been difficult for us all, and I'm happy to hear that you're safe and healthy with your family in Oklahoma. Ultimately, this situation is going to make all of us a lot stronger. What do you look forward to most in the near future, Lauren?
So right now I am, I should be in Dallas, right? Well, actually, what is it, Jim? Yes, I should be in Dallas right now at an internship with Guy Carpenter in a risk analyst role. Sadly, due to COVID-19, that was canceled. But in the wake of that, the head company, which is Marsh & McLennan, has created an online learning platform where they are kind of giving instruction and personal mentor roles to all kids who have, lost their internships with the company and their subsidiaries. This is something I'm really excited about, because getting a personal mentor that's like kind of tailored to what you want to do from a company like Marsh & McLennan is a pretty cool experience. And there's not very many people in the learning group. I think it's only like 150. And this is over their entire system of interns across the world. And so I'm really excited to kind of network within that community and learn a lot more about the company. And then my other role is I'm reprising my role from last summer as an intern with Trisura, which is a specialty insurance company. And I got to do some pretty cool work with them last summer, building loss triangles with the actuaries, doing some risk analysis on different deals they had. It's also a startup company, and it's really small, so I could work with people very closely, and I got to better understand how the entire company operated and worked, which you don't necessarily get when you're like in a large corporate setting. So I think for the immediate future, those 2 roles and internships, and then for next year, I'm really looking forward to seeing how this new system plays out with my leadership roles. So they just announced through email that we are moving to kind of a quarter system. And so figuring out how the different leadership roles I'm in are going to operate in that quarter system, what that's going to mean for like admin and Senate, is something I'm actually really looking forward to figuring out because I love problem solving. And so knowing that this is kind of going to be uncharted territory means that we have opportunity to really, change and impact things for the better going forward. So I'm really looking forward to like my current internship roles, and then also like forward into the school year, like how are we going to problem solve with everything that's happened in these past few months.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for your time here. Before we wrap up, I just want to see if there are any questions for Lauren in the chat room. So let me scroll to the top and see what I have. There's one from Bill and Sally Francis in Pasadena, California. They asked, how did you hear about reinsurance?
So my stepdad is actually in reinsurance. He was heavily involved in reinsurance right after he graduated from Whittier. And because of him, like he currently works in insurance, not reinsurance. He currently works in an insurance role, but he did reinsurance for almost 10, 12 years before he like moved into a different industry. And so I kind of grew up getting to hear about its existence. And through my internship roles, I got to meet different, people who were in the industry. And the more I learned about it, the more interesting it was. And because the barriers to entry for reinsurance are just basically knowing someone in the industry and knowing what it is. And now that I've kind of done those two things, I can really expand into a lot of different areas. And I love the fact that it is global. Most of the companies are based outside of the United States, even though they have US branches. So that means I can effectively like work and live in the United States while also being able to communicate and work with companies and groups all over the world.
There's another question that asks, is Chinese difficult? He says, I would think it is.
Yes. I think the hardest part is that there's basically 3 different pieces of the language you have to learn. When you're learning like Spanish or French, you're learning the French alphabet, which is just the English alphabet with different sounds and accents, and then you're learning the words and the sounds that go with them. With Chinese, you're learning the character, the pinyin, which is basically the like phonetic sound that the character makes, and then you're also learning the English translation. So whenever you see a character in your mind, at least when you're first starting out, you see the character, you translate that into whatever the pinyin is for it, and then you translate that into English. You're not supposed to do that whenever you get good, but when you first start, that's kind of where it's at. So because there's that added layer, it makes it even more difficult.
Great. I know, I can't imagine taking Chinese. You're very, very, very bold woman for choosing that as your minor, my dear. We have a question from, actually a comment from Yvonne. She says that your parents must be so proud. You're such a dynamic woman who is doing amazing things. Very sweet. Eva asks, can you show us / teach us a couple of ASL signs, like the alphabet letters you mentioned?
Yeah, so let's see, what should we spell? Why don't we spell Whittier? Because like that's what this is. Okay, so the first letter in Whittier is the W, and that one's actually really easy. It's just like a 3, because it's a W. And then the next one is I, so it's just your pinky. And don't like move the pinky when you do it, because that's a J. So it's W, I, and then T is, so I'm gonna put my hand closer to the camera. So you're going to take these 2 and put it underneath. So that's a T. And then you're gonna have another T, of course, and then another I. And then E is just a basic, like a fist, basically. And then an R, and your R is kind of like a crossed finger, okay? So to spell Whittier overall, W, I, T, T, I, E, R. There's an H. I forgot the H. This is H. I forgot the H. after your W, you are going to put in H, and that is just 2 fingers out this way.
Great, great. We all learned something new. Yay, we all learned how to sign Whittier. That's great. Joseph asks, study abroad plans. Do you have any, Lauren?
Yes, so these have actually changed drastically in the past few months, weeks, term. I was originally supposed to be in London and Brussels in January, but regarding our new schedule, that's not going to work, and so that won't happen. But we are going to have a May or June term that is to New Zealand, and it is with Professor Duran. It's a multinational corporation class, and it is like an organizational management class in New Zealand that was supposed to be this May that kind of got moved. And then another course that I'd love to take is my advisor, Professor Gold, is hopefully, it will probably be moved to May and June, but it's an international business ethics course and it's in Dubai. And that's really cool. That's super exciting. And then I am planning on taking a semester abroad. I'm not sure if that semester is going to be a summer semester or actually during the school year. But right now, my plans are to take that semester abroad as a homestay in Barcelona, because that will allow me to work on my Spanish.
Great, sounds exciting. Bill and Sally Francis also ask, how many students taking Chinese? It was not available when I was there, so it wasn't available when Bill was a student.
So when I first got into the class, there were 15 students in my 101 course. And then second semester, there were 6. So it's really small. Next year, there will be 5 students because one of us graduated. And then if a student, moves up to our level or is like a new student who's at our level, because you test in to Chinese, you test in to see where you should be placed because a number of students come in already knowing part of the language. So if a student tests into our level, we'll have another student join. But right now it's pretty much the 5 of us and we're all minoring in it. So we'll be together in class for the next at least year. And we all have a group chat and we talk to each other and we all are good friends. And so it's kind of a little fun community.
Great. I'm gonna look and see if there's any more questions. If anyone maybe would like to unmute themselves and ask Lauren a question, feel free to do that right now as well, or use the chat room feature.
I've got a question for you, Lauren. Have you already started your ASWC position, or you were elected, right? But when do your duties actually start?
So I'm technically in the position right now.
Okay.
We actually have a Senate meeting next week, an e-board meeting next week. Right now we're planning out what our goals are for this next year and semester. And the president is actually currently having meetings with a lot of administrators and staff and faculty to figure out, different things that are happening in regards to the new system that they're implementing, different events that are going to go on or not go on for the new school year because of COVID-19, how social distancing is going to work, a number of different, large questions that the Senate kind of wants to address with the student body. But yeah, our position has technically already begun.
One more question. Are you still taking pictures? Are you going to have time to do that with all your other duties?
Yeah. What's really nice about my jobs on campus is that in high school, it's not nearly as spread out. You're going to school for 8 or 9 hours a day and then going straight to your, electives or your extracurriculars, and then you're going to your sports, and then you have to go home and do homework. And so it's pretty nonstop. But I found with college, something that I really appreciate is how spread out everything is and how much time you have to fully explore your classes and different topics. So I right now still do have time to take photos and still take photos for WC The Rock, which I'm really excited about. And of course, if something becomes too much, I'll prioritize and figure out what I need to, continue more than others. But as of right now, it's still definitely working.
Good.
Great. We have another question from Yvonne. It says, since you've been home, how has your college experience been in comparison to your other friends from other colleges?
Oh, very different. So I'm one of the few people in my friend group that went to a small liberal arts college. Most of my friends actually ended up at really large institutions, either in or out of state. And something I found very interesting was how much more personal our communication was with administration after we moved online. So our administration hosted a lot of, town halls or like question and answer sessions. We pretty much, if someone emailed the president of the college and said, hey, I want to talk about this, she would directly address the person in the next town hall and answer their questions. And I thought that was like a pretty phenomenal experience, if I'm being completely honest, because as the entire world was kind of thrown into disarray by this global pandemic, the institution still was like really valuing student voice. And some of my other friends didn't really get that experience. They had problems or issues that kind of fell on deaf ears. And granted, there's always improvements in every avenue at every institution, but I found in comparison to a lot of other institutions, when there were issues, Whittier was much quicker at like addressing them or talking about them than a lot of my friends. And I was also able to still have a school year in that sense. Like I was still able to really be in classes or be in, team meetings or club meetings or things like that. Whereas some of my other students, because class sizes were so big at their institutions, it kind of just became you do it on your own and try and teach yourself, which wasn't the case for Whittier. So that was honestly pretty nice in comparison to some of my friends.
Great response. Now, if there's anyone else that has another question, feel free to use the chat room or feel free to unmute yourself and ask away to Lauren. Give it a few seconds here on the clock. Well, if not, thank you so much to all of our attendees for your support of our students. We really appreciate it.
I do have a question for Lauren.
Oh, that's fine. Go ahead.
How are your dogs?
Oh my goodness, my dogs are doing very well. If you guys don't know, I have two dogs named Daisy and Sooner, and they're Cocker Spaniels. Joe was actually my advisor when I first came into Whittier, and I was really worried about not having my dogs at college, and he actually basically set up a pretty cool system where one of the former professors on campus would always come into the library and bring his dog, and I basically had free reign to go play with the dog on campus all the time. So, thank you, Joe, for that. Daisy and Sooner.
Welcome.
Oh, nice. Very sweet. Our poet pets, we love them. All right, if there's no more questions, I'll wrap it up and I'll introduce for next week, our next week's student, a little bio so everyone can get an idea of who's coming up. So we'll connect with the first year student, Kat Thomas. She's a freshman at Whittier and is majoring in social work and minoring in psychology. During her time at Whittier, she has been involved with WC The Rock, doing photography, videography, and social media work for them. We'll be sending out the next invitation soon, along with the recording of this video attached. Kat is eager to connect with you all and share her poet experience so far. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your week. Thank you.